Hey guys, Clint here with American Patriot Defense. So, training tip of this month, or I guess we can just say a tip of this month. Let's talk about home defense and the equipment that we use for that. Um, so, when I say equipment, basically, let's talk about the firearm that we use for that. So, we have three primary sources. We have a handgun, a rifle, and a shotgun. All right. So, when it comes to which one is best, this is going to be me telling you in my experience and what I would recommend. I'll go ahead and tell you that I don't recommend a shotgun typically, um, and we'll kind of go into that a little bit. But let's talk about handgun. All right, so handgun. The reason handgun is a good option is especially if it's your everyday carry handgun. You're typically familiar with it. You've got a lot of rounds through it because you're training with it constantly. You have typically a designated spot for it. You can put it next to your bed. It's easily concealable, easy to hide in the residence. Um, and yeah, so it's a familiar piece of equipment that you use constantly. So you're, we'll say, good with it. You've got the repetition to use it, and you've got the most experience with it typically. So that's why a handgun is pretty good. Also, when we talk about what a handgun can do inside a residence, we'll say anything from 380 to 45 or 10 millimeter. If you were to miss, and if we look at the statistics, unfortunately, under stress, a lot of us will miss in a volley of shots, meaning multiple shots. There's a chance that you're going to miss some of those shots. The penetration of that round through multiple layers of drywall, or when it hits 2x4s, is less. It's going to go through less layers of drywall, cause less damage to the home, and has less chance of going through multiple rooms inside that home, obviously depending on your self-defense load that you're carrying. So that's something to consider when it comes to handguns. Um, Again, statistically, no one's a perfect shot when you're under stress. You can get really good, but never really rely on yourself to be a perfect shot. If we look at the police statistics, 30%. It's not very good. Now things are getting better with the modernization of firearms, especially with the red dots coming on pistols. We see that going up to 60 to 70%, which is a much better. So that being said, handguns always a good option for a home defense weapon. Okay. Next on that list is a rifle, or when I say a rifle, I mean like a modern sporting rifle or AR style rifle. Um, let's just look let's look at history in the global war on terror. How many soldiers used a AR style or that looking style weapon to clear multiple residents and structures uh, in those conflicts? Um, yeah, so we know that it can maneuver in and around structures really well. And depending on the roundage that we use on that, it can a good frangible round again isn't going to over penetrate to multiple layers of drywall. Now, if you use a ball round or a green tip or something like that, then you're going to have multiple layers of penetration because that's what it's designed to do. But if you could use a good frangible round, that round will, once it hits a median, it starts dissipating its energy much more quickly. We know that weapon can be used, and it's typically a little bit more controllable too because you have multiple points of contact. You're not just holding it with your hands. You've got a point of contact on your shoulder, hand, a grip on the forearm, and it's typically if you're not running a red dot on a pistol, you typically will have a red dot or some type of sighting, an additional sighting solution on that carbine or that rifle. So we're looking at accurate shots, and you have typically a higher round capacity. Not everybody is running 25 plus rounds inside their everyday carry handgun versus a AR style weapon. It's nothing to have 28 rounds in it in a 30 round magazine, and they even make more higher capacity magazines than that. So that would also be very, very high on the list as a very, very viable and good home defense weapon. Now, that being said, is you need to get the repetition in using that, because the mechanics of that weapon is different. You have that selector switch that you need to be able to run on and off. If it's a home defense weapon or if it's a self-defense weapon, it needs to have a light on it, kind of no different than in my opinion, a self-defense pistol needs to have a light on it that is separate than your handheld light. You always will have a handheld light, but you need to have something to positively identify the target, because I know a lot of times people don't think about flipping your light switch on in your own house. That's kind of getting off topic a little bit here, but we can talk about that later. But you need to have a way to illuminate and identify your target with that, and you need to know how to use that with that weapon system simultaneously while moving the selector switch. Know how to use the charging handle and all the components inside that. So yeah, how to all the different features an AR has. Is it ambidextrous? Does it have ambi safeties? Does it have ambi controls when it comes to the bolt catch release? So those are things that you have to kind of learn, and if you've not really put the roundage in the manipulation training with a rifle, it can be a little bit more complex, meaning that when you need it isn't the time you need to learn how to use it, if that makes sense, right? So you need to train with it prior to needing to use it. Okay. And then again, talking about the roundage, most of these are going to be 22 caliber style weapons. You may have one that's in a 308, but regardless, it's going to be a much smaller hole when it comes to hitting that drywall or hitting those medians. So, which means if you were to miss, that's something that's not destroying your home or your property that you're going to have to repair. You're going to be able to repair that with potentially spackle or something like that, paint over it versus destruction. So that kind of brings me into the shotgun round. So shotguns for the longest time were the staple for home defense, because I don't have to really aim really well. That's completely incorrect. You still have to aim, but the thing with the shotgun is it shoots a pattern, all right? And you need to know that pattern that it's shooting based on the load that you're shooting. Just because it shoots a good pattern with a turkey load or a certain particular load, and you're like, well, this is my turkey load, or this is my hunting load, and this is my self-defense load, that pattern is going to be completely different with that self-defense load, and you need to know those differences in that pattern. Buckshot is notorious for having a flyer. So you may have a nice, decent, tight group with your buckshot, and then you have just a single flyer just out and away on that last pellet. So, when you look at buckshot, those are typically 32 on the 12 gauge or 32 caliber projectiles traveling at 1,200 feet per second each. So basically, you have 8 to 9 9mm size projectiles traveling at once. So a benefit to that is anything that gets in the way of that shotgun is probably going to be taken care of. However, when you miss, you start making a lot more destruction a lot faster. And the recoil of that is going to be much more substantial. So controlling that recoil is a lot more substantial. So, if you are depending on a shotgun to take care of your family, and maybe you're teaching your wife or your kids how to use that for home defense, maybe that's not the best option, because they may get the first shot off, but the second shot may be pretty difficult because they're recovering from that. Okay, so think about that. And the load selection is going to be big on that. Oh, well, I've got 2 slug at the beginning, and I've got 4 buckshot at the end. You're not going to remember that, and that is highly negligent on your part for doing that. Okay, because you're not going to remember it, and then if you're shooting that slug and you missed, you just sent a 1 ounce piece of lead through multiple layers of drywall and possibly exiting your house, depending on what your backstop is, and potentially going into your neighbor's house, and then your neighbor's dog gets taken out. And then you got civil liabilities all over that. So what I'm saying is the shotgun typically isn't going to be your best option anymore these days, okay? Because there's just too many variables and factors that are against the shotgun. You even look at law enforcement today, shotgun's not used hardly at all. If a shotgun is used in law enforcement, for the most part, it's used in for less lethal, and it's designated as a less lethal weapon. It has less lethal rounds. It is not used for a actual lethal option typically. Now, certain agencies may still have it, and they still may use it for like a breaching tool. Shotguns are great for breaching, but you're not doing that in our home, and we can't really justify that in self-defense for the most part because that is an offensive maneuver. Okay, so we're not going offensive; we're going to be remaining defensive. All right, so just really, really think about shotgun and what load you're going to do if you want to choose to use a shotgun. I would stick to either the handgun or the rifle when it comes to that. But yeah, so that's kind of the training tip, or the tip of the week is when we start talking about what we're actually going to use in our self-defense. It matters, okay? So let's just really focus on that and narrow that down. All right, guys. We'll catch you on the range. We'll see you on the next one. All right. Appreciate it.